And now let's turn our attention to Northeast Africa. As any history buff will know, one of the great ancient civilizations was based in Egypt along the river Nile. The Nile is considered the world's longest river, and its waters nurtured the people who built the pyramids. Even today, the river is essential for modern-day Egypt. But Egypt says that its crucial water supply is in danger, and it's blaming Ethiopia for this. Why is that? Because Ethiopia has built a giant dam along the Nile, the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. When completed, it will be the largest in Africa, and Egypt is afraid that the dam will hurt its water security. For years, it has tried to get Ethiopia to sign a water-sharing treaty to secure access to the Nile's waters. Egypt tried again this week, but the talks failed, and the tensions are only rising. Here's a report.
The River Nile has historically been considered the world's longest river. It's also one of the mightiest, supplying water to a host of nations. All these countries you see come in the Nile's drainage basin. They depend on the river for water. Drinking water, water for farming, for hydroelectric power, you name it. The river brings water from Africa's Great Lakes to the arid nations of Northeast Africa. And so, it breathes life to the parched lands. When it comes to the Nile, perhaps no country is as dependent on its waters as Egypt. The Nile cuts across the Sahara Desert in Egypt and allows agriculture to flourish in the country. Egypt depends on the Nile for 97% of its water needs, and so you can imagine why Cairo would be furious about any obstruction to the mighty river, which is why Egypt is engaged in a diplomatic row with Ethiopia. Addis Ababa has spent a decade building a mega dam on the Nile. Well, a part of the river anyway. You see, the Nile has many tributaries, smaller rivers that join together to make the Nile what it is. They don't have the most unique names. There's the White Nile, Blue Nile, Red Nile, and Yellow Nile. Two major tributaries are the White and Blue Nile. These are permanent rivers. They don't depend on rainfall like some of the other tributaries, so their water contribution could always be relied upon. But Egypt thinks the situation has changed because of a dam in Ethiopia. The country has built the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam on the Blue Nile. It will become Africa's largest hydroelectric dam when it's fully operational. Operations at the dam have started. They began last year, but it still isn't at full capacity. The reservoir behind the dam needs to be filled completely. It will then release water to generate electricity. This is what Egypt is afraid of, the dam getting filled. It says the dam can hamper the flow of water into the Nile. Cairo has tried to stop the dam's construction and operation. It wants to guarantee its water supply, but Ethiopia has gone ahead with its plans. The dam's reservoir is being filled in stages. The fourth stage began this June, and Ethiopia has even tried to assure Egypt.
The GERD is a manifestation of equitable and reasonable use. We are certain that the GERD has immense benefit to lower riparian countries. Nonetheless, we have kept our doors open to accommodate concerns our fellow riparian countries might have. We reiterate our commitment to the African Union-led trilateral process to address any remaining concern.
The talks have been ongoing for years now, with no end in sight. An important meeting was held between Egypt, Sudan, and Ethiopia this week. The two-day meet in Cairo was to discuss water guarantees. Egypt wants assurances that no matter what, its water supply won't be hampered, that even during a drought, Ethiopia won't turn off the tap. But Addis Ababa has not agreed to Cairo's terms. Sudan is the only other country downstream of the Ethiopian dam. It has mostly been on Ethiopia's side, but it too wants assurances. So all three nations, Egypt, Sudan, and Ethiopia, had gathered to work out a compromise, like they had multiple times in the past. But once again, the talks have ended in failure. Ethiopia will continue to make its dam operational. Egypt will continue to rail against it. And without an agreement, the tensions between them will keep souring in the days to come.